Hi, my name is Xuan, and today we are talking about accents, which you can hear because I'm not from America, I'm from Malaysia. Okay, so let's start by actually listening to two speakers saying the sentence, "We're having fries for dinner." Speaker A says it like this.
We're having fries for dinner. We're having fries for dinner.
And speaker B says it like this.
We're having fries for dinner. We're having fries for dinner.
Now, if you're familiar with US accents, you probably picked up on the fact that speaker B speaks with a southern accent, right? But how do we know this, and what exactly is an accent? Well, it turns out when we're listening to people speak, we're actually paying close attention to certain features in the sound signal, right? So one example is what we call ing variation. Speaker A says having, but speaker B says haven't. There's something else called I variation. Speaker A says fries, but speaker B says fries. So if you hear someone saying having fries, you hear that as a mainstream US accent. But if you hear someone saying having fries, you hear that as a southern accent, right? And this tells us essentially that accents are just combinations of linguistic features that are socially perceivable. Now, this is very well researched in the US, but I want to take us out of the US and ask the question, what about English in other parts of the world? And for that, we turn to my home country, Malaysia. Now, Malaysia is a multi-ethnic and multicultural country, and so we speak a lot of different languages. English is very widely spoken, but we also speak languages like Malay, Mandarin, and Tamil. And one of the main questions that I ask in my current research is, how do accents in English develop in such a diverse multicultural population, right? And it turns out, when you have a whole bunch of people speaking lots of different languages, people group themselves by their dominant language. So you can have someone like Esther, for example, who speaks English as a dominant language. Someone like Mei Li speaks Mandarin as a dominant language. And someone like Aisha speaks Malay as a dominant language. So what I did was I went around Kuala Lumpur and I gathered a whole bunch of participants like Esther, Mei Li, and Aisha. I recorded how they speak and I analyzed the sound signal to figure out where exactly their accents come from. And what I found was just by listening to one word, the single word pick, you can actually hear the differences between Esther, Mei Li, and Aisha. Esther sounds like this.
Say pick for me. Say pick for me.
Mei Li sounds like this.
Say pick for me. Say pick for me.
And Aisha sounds like this.
Say pick for me. Say pick for me.
Right, so they're clearly all different and you can hear their accents even within that single word. But if you remember, accents are just combinations of linguistic features, right? And so what this tells us is that the combinations can occur even within a single word. So to analyze this, I took the word pick and I looked at the sound signal. Now we can decompose it into two smaller parts. We can look at the consonant, so the P in pick, and we can look at the vowel, so the I in pick. And so today, I'm going to tell you that it's the combination of the consonant and the vowel that gets us the different accents. So let's unpack that and start with the consonant. Esther uses what we call P with long release. There's an extra puff of air, and you can hear it when she says pick.
Say pick for me.
Now, when we look at Mei Li, she also uses the same P with a long release.
Say pick for me.
But when we look at Aisha, her P has a short release. It does not have that extra puff of air, and she says pick.
Say pick for me.
And so when we turn to the actual data, we see the same exact pattern across all speakers. Speakers like Esther and Mei Li, for their Ps, the release is long. But when we look at speakers like Aisha, the release is short. So that's the consonant. But if you notice, just looking at the consonant alone doesn't allow us to tease apart between Esther and Mei Li. For that, we have to look at the vowel. So Esther uses what we call a lower vowel, right? Her tongue is in the lower position, and this makes the vowel sound like I, pick.
Say pick for me.
And Mei Li uses a higher vowel, right? Her tongue is in a slightly higher position, so instead of I, she says E, peak.
Say peak for me.
And Aisha also uses this same vowel.
Say big for me.
So again, turning to the actual data, we see that tongue position for speakers like Esther is lower, but for speakers like Mei Li and Aisha, the position of the tongue is higher. Okay, so now we can combine the consonant and the vowel to figure out which speaker is which. If you have a P with a long release, you combine that with a lower vowel, you sound like Esther, pick.
Say pick for me.
If you have P with a long release, and you combine that with a higher vowel, E, you sound like Mei Li, peak.
Say peak for me.
And if you have P with a short release, and you combine that with a high vowel, you sound like Aisha, beak.
Say big for me.
And so what this tells us is that that accent that we identified as Esther, Mei Li, and Aisha within that one word is just a combination of the consonant and the vowel. And then when we ran a follow-up study, we found that when we give participants just that one word, they could accurately identify which speaker was Esther, Mei Li, and Aisha. So what have we learned? Well, we've learned that accents are essentially combinations of different linguistic features. But we've also learned that this combination can occur within a single word, and that listeners can use these combinations to identify different speakers in society. And so the takeaway here really is that when we speak, even something as small as a single word contains rich acoustic information that's unique to our own backgrounds and our own identities. And as users of language, we can readily pick up on these details very quickly without even having to think about them. And so to me, and I think for all of us, it's a very important reminder that languages at its core, with the advancement of generative AI, speech synthesis, automatic speech recognition, that languages at its core are still tied to the humans that use them. Thank you.